John, obviously a lot of kerfuffle. Panama is now a word that everybody is using. Is it too simple to say that a lot of what's being pinpointed was because we had high interest rates and people were pouring money in here to get the interest rates?
Well, that's part of the picture. I mean, the problem that the Reserve Bank has, it has a difficulty in the housing market, so it can't actually lower interest rates easily without stimulating the housing market. But the money you mentioned coming to New Zealand because of high interest rates is looking for a home, so it goes into the housing market, putting pressure on house prices. So it's all part of this picture where the pieces are connected. There's lots of moving parts, but the outturn is high house prices, high currency is bad for the real part of the economy that relies on doing stuff and sending bills out to people, rather than the rentier part of the economy that relies on asset price appreciation and says, well, you know, anything that might threaten asset price appreciation is completely unacceptable. In the meantime, earning a living becomes more and more difficult.
The main thrust of the media at the moment, though, is tax evasion, and we're a tax haven, which is something totally different.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen quite a, it's what do we mean by tax haven? You know, arose by any other name. So one politician might say, we are not a tax haven. Another might say, we are. The definition of tax haven underneath that becomes a thing to debate. So if we help people hide their identity, if in hiding their identity they evade tax somewhere else, we are still part of that nasty, dirty part of the system. And really, I've heard lots of politicians on the right and on the left say, we need open and transparent information. You know, we've got the US government wanting Apple to break the codes on the iPhone.
Yeah.
But when we say, well, actually, we want everything to be open and transparent, maybe that's not such a good idea. And so we've got an issue that says, when things aren't open and transparent, there's a question mark. And the more things aren't open and transparent, the bigger the question mark. And if we are part of that system which encourages, supports, or allows identities to be hidden, then we are part of that system, and that can damage our reputation. And Peter Dunne said yesterday that if we get the reputation as a tax haven or part of that system, that could be as bad for New Zealand as foot and mouth in the primary sector.
I don't understand that.
Well, what he's saying is that foot and mouth would damage the primary sector. And having,
that I can understand.
So the effect on New Zealand is we find it difficult to transact in the world. All our transactions are double checked by everybody. I'll give you an example. Here's a thing that we do to make sure our customers in the US pay a minimum amount of tax, because we pay tax in New Zealand. So we used to fill in a one-page form. That one-page form essentially said, under the tax treaty, we pay 5% tax, and we can give that to our customers, and they don't pay a large amount of tax on our products. In February this year, that one-page form turned to a 8-page form, and it asked questions like, are you a non-participating FFI, including an FFI or an FFI-related blah, 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 blah.
You're right, straight through to the wicket
So
keeper.
there's 2 inches of paper to read to work out what this is about. To understand it, to answer that question, I have to understand the question. And this is the US tax authority, the IRS. So the tightening up across the system starts to make it more difficult for the bad people to do the things, but it makes it more difficult for the people who are just doing a day-to-day business.
Yeah.
So if there's a big question mark, or if the question mark grows against New Zealand, we won't be able to take part in things like tax treaties. And that's the threat. So if you like, to do business, we need a reputation. If that reputation is damaged, that damage could be equivalent to the damage we talked about in the primary sector. So it's that, I think, is probably overstating it in terms of Peter Dunne, but he's making a point that it's important, because we don't see it, because it's not entirely obvious. The fact is, 9 pages, 8 pages, 1 page, complicated, not complicated. It could all get more complicated as a result, and that's bad for the income statement of businesses that I was talking about.
Oversimplification, why don't we just tax it and say if you earn the money in New Zealand, you get taxed?
Well, we do. I earn, but we're talking about the money in the US. So I'm non-resident in the US, I'm selling products in the US. Those products would be taxed if I was resident in the US. Because I'm tax resident in New Zealand, I pay the tax in New Zealand. So I don't want to pay it in the US because I'd be paying it twice.
Okay.
Hence the tax treaty. And hence the reputation of New Zealand being important when we're talking to the IRS.
How are the world markets going?
Soft and difficult. Oil's in the mid-40s, it's up a bit. China, domestic and export demand is soft. That's the ongoing worry. We have good days, we have bad days, but we certainly haven't recovered to where we were late last year.
And New Zealand?
New Zealand's got that perennial problem in terms of the rock and hard place that our policy framework's got us between. We opened talking about money coming in chasing high interest rates. That money may be finding its way into the housing market, may be hidden by some foreign trust, compounding the tax issues. Where we are now is the economy is soft. Given just that bit of information, the Reserve Bank should be cutting interest rates, which takes some of that pressure off the exchange rate, but clearly in an overheated housing market puts more pressure on the housing market. And so that dilemma now exists, the rock and hard place of interest rates. So what does the governor do? Does he cut and see problems in the housing market? Does he not cut and see problems in the real economy? Well, you know where my vote would be straight away. Let's sort the real economy out. But more fundamentally, it's the policy framework. That policy framework needs, you know, the things that we saw in the 60s and 70s. You went to borrow money to buy a house. How much do you earn? 2.5 times that. So that's a loan to income limit. By breaking the value of lending away from income, what we've allowed is this asset price explosion. And I think those macro-prudential controls, like the loan to value, we need to be moving towards income to value type loans, or that type of control. So it's an asset that can earn, or it's your earnings, and that's what limits how much you can borrow to buy the asset.